Now, in this next section, we're going to be talking about the whole dating equation. How do you go about dating? What are the things you should be looking for? I'm amazed today at what a poor job people are doing when it comes to the area of dating. They're supposed to be spending time with each other, learning about each other, discovering what they're really like, and then they get married, and now they're miserable with each other. And of course, people like me got to try and help them to kind of unscramble everything and work through it. But honestly, if people would just do a better job in the dating process, I think they could avoid a lot of heartache and pain in the first place.
Yeah. All right. We'll see how much you'll be clapping by the time I get done. I'm going to be talking to you about dating and some of the important aspects that we as Christians should be looking at when it comes to the idea of dating. I want to share one Bible verse with you, and then we'll move on from there. This Bible verse is found in Romans, the 12th chapter. It says this. Paul writes, he says, "Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world." Why does he got to tell us to do that? Because it's really easy to conform to the pattern of the world. The way that everybody around us, people by and large who are not Christians, just our secular culture, they have a way of viewing things, a way of approaching life. And overwhelmingly, it's extremely easy to get caught up in the pattern of the culture around us instead of the biblical pattern. In fact, I would dare argue that the biggest problem that we're having in Christianity today and why so many Christian marriages are failing just like secular marriages is because we are following the pattern of our secular culture instead of following the pattern that God sets for us. I want to talk to you about dating. Now, there's some debate nowadays about dating versus courting. They say, well, dating is just for fun. Courting is for serious, looking for a spouse kind of things. I don't know. To me, it's all kind of semantics. To me, when I talk about dating, I'm talking about courting. I'm talking about when you start spending any kind of serious time with another person, this is supposed to be intentional. That's not to say that, if your mom and dad say it's cool, if you're younger and you want to go out in groups and stuff like that, fine. But by the time you start really starting to spend a lot of time with one person, you are now headed down the path of serious dating. Okay? And the purpose of dating is really simply this, to discover whether or not this person would make a suitable lifetime mate. That's really what it's for. Now, a lot of people don't take dating really seriously. They think it's more about trying to discover your soulmate. Everybody talks about their soulmate and eharmony.com, helping you find your soulmate. Everybody's looking for their soulmate and all these stupid chick flicks. Have you seen all these flicks? They're all about finding your soulmate. And if you can really find your soulmate, amazing things happen. They'll cross great distances or huge obstacles. Some movies have them crossing time barriers and stuff, all because I need to connect with my soulmate. And there's that one special cosmic being out there just for you. No, there's not. Okay? It is a bunch of hooey. It is just as dumb as a brick. But yet this is exactly what our culture has gotten to, and people today now are desperately trying to find their soulmate. They don't use their brains. They don't use their logic. They don't use the support structure around them. They are trying to use their emotions to see if they can connect with a soulmate. And it's certainly not a biblical concept. Now, the idea comes from Greek mythology. At one time, the Greeks believed, according to their mythology, that human beings had 4 arms, 4 legs, and there's some debate whether or not we had 2 heads or just one head with 2 faces, but you get the idea. We kind of look like cockroaches, all right? That was their idea. And then apparently, somewhere along the line, we made some Greek demigod angry, and he came down and he split us in half. And that's how we want it, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 face. And part of our punishment now is we have to search through the world to find our other half. You complete me. That whole scene, all right? Now, it sounds kind of strange, but yet this is what people are basing their relationships on today. Listen, I really don't think at any time we all look like cockroaches. I really don't. And I don't think there's one cosmic person just for you. Sadly, Christians, instead of thinking biblically, this is what I'm talking about letting the pattern of this world change the way that we think. We've taken that stupid idea and then we've spiritualized it. That's where God has one person just for you. You know, really. I mean, think how ridiculous that is. What we're saying is that God Almighty created another human being just to make you happy. I mean, come on. If that is not the epitome of self-centered, narcissistic thinking, I do not know what is. God did not create another human being just to put a grin on your face. All right? As much as he loves you, you're not the center of the universe, okay? This isn't how these things work. A successful marriage, the truth of it, is not about finding the right person. Now, having said that, you want to find the best you can. All right? Honestly, girls, if he's an axe murderer, move on. You know? But I can change him, I can change. No, you can't. Honestly, if it looks like a skunk, it walks like a skunk, and it smells like a skunk, he's a skunk for crying out loud. We'll talk more about that in a second. But, you know, you want to find the best you can, but it's not, a successful marriage isn't about finding the right person so much as it is about doing the right things. That's why the Bible never, ever, 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 anywhere talks about trying to find your soulmate, trying to find that one special person. See, because the reason that's so appealing to us is because we think if we find the right person, it'll just be easy. Then it's not on us. It's about finding that right person. It's not because I'm a self-centered, narcissistic slob. It's just because I didn't find my soulmate, okay? Which is ridiculous. The Bible never talks, and the reason the Bible never talks about relationships in those terms is because as Christians, the principles of Christianity that we say we believe in, the principles of love and patience and kindness and forgiveness, these principles are so powerful. They'll work with virtually any two people in the world if they will live by those principles. That's why the Bible says the only thing about, you know, when it comes to marriage is make sure you marry someone who is also a Christian, someone who believes in these principles. Because at the end of the day, if you've been married for a little while and you're starting to drive each other crazy and he's getting on your nerves and she won't shut up, it is those principles that will carry you through, not some belief in some cosmic being. There's no place in the Bible God ever told anybody to marry anybody, but the closest you can get is when an angel told Joseph that he should go ahead and marry Mary. But he was freaked out because, you know, he's engaged her and all of a sudden finds out she's pregnant and he's freaking out. So what's this about, you know? And the angel comes and says, just calm down, you know, it was the Holy Spirit and this is the Messiah and stuff like that. About the only other one you can find is in the Old Testament where God told Hosea the prophet to go marry a prostitute. And even then, he didn't say which prostitute to marry. He said, just go pick one. All right. And if you're thinking about marrying a prostitute, you really should have God tell you that first. But other than that, there is no such thing as all of this stuff. So it really comes down to finding someone that you can build a life with who believes the same things that you believe in. Now, what is dating really about? How do you find the right person? Here's some advice for you. Number one, dating is about really looking at a person, really analyzing who they are in their character. What are they really like? Now, first of all, the number one thing, the Bible is very clear, is that you should only be seriously considering marrying, and for that matter, even dating another Christian. Now, that'll tick off a lot of people watching this DVD because there's a lot of Christians who they don't take that seriously. And whether or not the person they're dating is a Christian or not, it doesn't really matter to them. But I love him, and I think he's my soulmate, la, 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 la. Look, you can justify it any way you want. What you're doing, from the Bible's perspective, is wrong. And you are headed for trouble. That's number one. You need to find someone else who lives and believes in the same principles that you do. Number two, you want to look at how they react to things in life. It's easy to act. It's easy to hide who you are by the way you act. We all do that. You know, people, you get around certain types of people, you start acting like those kinds of kids or you know, whatever the situation is. And people can kind of fake their way through a lot of situations. But one thing that's really hard to hide is how you react to stuff. When people start reacting, now you really see what they're like. You know, what happens when he gets really ticked off? What does he do? How does she handle it when something really starts irritating her? How does she respond to that? That's what you want to look at, because that's the kind of character that starts getting revealed, because that's hard to fake. You can fake the acting all day long, but when somebody ticks you off, you see the real person come out, okay? Or someone gets real critical, how do they react to that person? Well, that's stupid, you know. That's what you want to look at. Because in their reactions, now you're getting a real picture of what this person is like. This is the person you will be living with. This is the person who you will be marrying. Not so much the actor as the reactor. And if you start seeing reactions that are bad news and start spelling out, man, just move on. You will not die. You will be fine. Better to make a right decision based on the reactions of the person that you're learning about than to get caught up in their actions and make a mistake and think you'll straighten it out later. Very, very hard to straighten it out later. One of the other things you want to be able to look at in people's lives is their past. Who are they? What have they been through? What are they doing? Some of the people watching this DVD, they're not all teens. A lot of them are in their early 20s, mid-20s. Some even hitting 30 that are interested in the subject about dating and stuff. Good grief. Look at the person's past. Their past says all kinds of things about them. Now, the other thing you want to look at is their family. Because, their family says a lot about them. What is their family like? Are they a bunch of psycho crazy people? Remember, you're thinking of marrying into this deal, okay? Are they real critical kind of people, all the time? Are they nasty? A lot of times we discount the family because we're just fascinated by the one individual. Not that necessarily that person will always be like the family, but at a minimum, you're going to have to deal with that family for the rest of your life. It's all fair game. And that's something you got to understand about dating. It's all fair game. Don't get caught up in your emotions, letting your emotions drive it, and take your head and put it in a box somewhere. If you will pay attention, you will start succeeding more. People will start finding people that they can really connect with and build a life together with. One of the best things you can do when you're dating someone is what I call use a veto system. In other words, let other people speak into your life about your dating decisions. Now, ideally, that should be your parents, but that depends on your parents. Some of us come from great parents. Some of them are a little crazy, it is what it is. But, if you can't trust your parents because of wherever they're at in their lives, find someone you can trust, some mentor, some people that a pastor, a youth pastor, somebody. Some other young couples that are already married, and get advice from them. Let them speak into your life. Because what happens is when your emotions start running, your brain quits thinking. And it's important for you to get advice and input from other people. If everybody around you is saying, this is a bad idea. This guy isn't good for you. This girl isn't good for you. It's not a personal attack on your soul. And a lot of people think, they're just picking on me. Nobody understands me. Everyone, I love him. I just love him. Nobody else loves him. I don't know why they don't love him. Because he's a jerk. That's why they don't love him. You just don't see it because you're all emotionally caught up in it. Or maybe he's crazy, or maybe who knows what he does. But get other people speaking into your life. And let me say this to you as Christians, because overwhelmingly the people watching this come from a Christian worldview. Don't let the idea of salvation make you stupid. Let me explain. What happens is, oftentimes, and I see this all the time, you should see the emails and stuff that I get constantly from people asking me their opinion. Some guy, some girl, somebody's dating someone who has been a mess, and they're violent, and this and that, and all of a sudden, they finally get them to come to church, and then they pray and ask Jesus into their heart. And now they want to marry him right away. They think, well, it's okay now, he's a Christian. Yeah, I guess, but you still want to look at their life. Okay? Don't use the idea of just because, all of a sudden he has Jesus in his heart, or all of a sudden she has Jesus in her heart, that all of a sudden everything's cool. Now, as far as God is concerned, everything is cool because they're right with God and God forgives them. That's the whole idea of salvation. But you have to understand something about Christianity. Christianity, you walk out what God has put on the inside of you. If you have someone who has a real anger problem and bitterness problem, or some guy who's been addicted to pornography or drugs or alcohol and all of a sudden they come to church and pray with you a couple of times, chances are they're still going to struggle with these things. It doesn't all just go away right away. As far as our sins are concerned, they all go away. And I think that's where we make the mistake. We misunderstand salvation. Before God, it's all gone. You could be an axe murderer and come to God and ask him to forgive you. Man, and as far as God's concerned, you have a clean slate. you start over. It's a do-over. It's a wonderful thing about salvation. That's what makes Christianity such an incredible message, that no matter what you've done, no matter who you are, you can start over fresh with God. But when it comes to marrying somebody, you're not necessarily marrying their soul. You're marrying the whole picture, okay? And someone who has real anger issues, just because he comes to church and prays a few times, doesn't mean he's not going to have major anger issues. Doesn't mean that he won't get, when the pressure comes on, he might slip back into the habits that he's always known. It often takes years to build any character. So don't, especially you girls, because girls are fabulous for this. I get more emails from women, and when I say girls, I mean everything from 17 to 52, who start dating these guys. Everything about them is a disaster about the guy. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, but he just asked Jesus in his heart, so I guess it's okay. And I warn them, man, don't go there. Slow down. Check, I got an email in my inbox right now as we speak. I was reading it earlier today. Some girl writes to me, the guy's been, he's just a mess. Anger, this, that, and the other. Diseases and stuff that he's carrying in his body and everything, and not a Christian, and she's been dating him like she shouldn't, and then finally gets him to come to church, and he prays, and now she wants to marry him, and she's known him now for all of 7 months. Well, first of all, marrying somebody after 7 months is probably not a good idea, okay? Get a chance, but because, well, Jesus came in his heart, la, 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 la. They think it doesn't matter. Listen, you're connecting with a guy. Thank God he put his faith in Jesus. Let's see that work it out. Let's see God work in his life. It might take him 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Who knows before he really gets his head straight. It might take 10 months. I have no idea. But just don't use the fact because someone comes into your faith world, and it could be male or, whatever. If you're the girl, if you're the guy, some girl that you've been dating, all of a sudden, boom. Man, slow down a little bit. Take a look at the big picture. I get it that God has forgiven them. But you've got to live with this person because their past says a lot about them. It's not that God can't, give you the grace to deal with some of their troubles in their past, but be smart. Let me give you an example. A guy emails me a couple of months ago. He's been dating this girl for like 5 years, which, he needs a swirly dating for 5 years. For crying out loud, he shouldn't be dragging anything out that long. Just after a year or two, make a decision, move on or not. We'll talk more about that in a second. But after all these years, and he's saying, well, I don't know if I can marry her because, in the past, before I met her, she had an abortion and she did this and the other. He's got all these reservations. And I said, look, it's fair game. You can look at anybody's past. And if they've done things that you wonder about their character, what they will do in a real pressure situation, even though God can forgive anything, as dating, as looking at someone, everything is fair game. Their home, their lives, their background, you need to look at the whole picture. And it's fair game to move on. What's not fair game, and what's not right, is to keep dating that girl for years with you still, I don't know if I really if I can get past this. I mean, at a minimum, move on. Let God bring somebody else into her life who can deal with it. There's all kinds of things. We live in a broken world, let's face it. And there's a lot of people that come into our world, okay, as they learn about God, want God in their lives, and they're broken people that God is healing and stuff like that. But again, just don't be stupid about it. All of it is fair game. And some people say, well, I need to forgive them. Well, you don't need to forgive them. They didn't do it to you. They didn't hurt you. This is something they did to others, or they did to God. It's just you need to understand it's all part of the character picture. And particularly someone who's only been walking in a faith walk for a short period of time, slow down. Be careful. Okay? The next biggest thing I can share with you, don't let your feelings be the final decider. People, I've all the time come up to me and say, Pastor Mark, I've been dating this guy, and I really love him, but everybody tells me I shouldn't have anything to do with him. My pastor says I shouldn't have anything to do with him. My mom says I shouldn't have to do to him. My brothers and sisters says he's a complete loser. But, what do you think I should do? And I always say, well, listen to your family. And they'll always go, but I love him. But what about my feelings? But I have to be honest with my heart. No, you don't. Don't try and be honest with your feelings. They're the most dishonest part of you. Feelings change all the time. And honestly, in America, in the West culture actually, but particularly in America, only in the most important decision of our lives concerning a relationship like marriage, only in that area do we let feelings be the dictator.
I mean, who would let feelings dictate any other part of their life? Can you imagine people deciding Monday morning whether or not to go to school based on their feelings? Who'd go? Unless you really like school, some people do. Yeah. Can you imagine people going to work based on how they feel? Calling up their boss, saying, boss, I'd really love to come to work today, but I just have to be honest with my feelings. Just not feeling it today. Well, he'd fire your butt, and he should. No other area of life would anybody run their feelings as the motivator for their decision, except for some insane reason when it comes to marriage and love. Then feelings become, you follow your feelings, you are headed, if you're not using your head. Feelings are part of it, I get it. But you let the feelings be the final determinant, you're headed for potential trouble. Listen, people, look around you. We are in a world where over half of the marriages end in divorce. A lot of you are even nervous about even thinking about the idea of marriage because you've seen others fail around you. Maybe your parents fail around you. And you've gotten the idea that marriage is somehow inherently flawed or a dangerous thing to step into. No, it's not. What you're seeing are the results of people who live by the principles I'm telling you not to live by. There's a reason why people are failing at such a high level. And this is relatively new. This has only been happening in the last 20, 30 years, which is new, your whole lifetime. Some of you guys, some of you are not even 20 years old. But in terms of the thousands of years of the past human history, this is all relatively new. People didn't have divorce rates of 50, 60%. This is insane. And the reason people are failing is because they're doing the wrong things. But we keep wanting to do the same things, hoping for different results. Well, that's insane. We have to evaluate what we're doing. All right, then finally, I get this one. This is probably the biggie of all the things you do during your dating experience. Don't get physical, because this is the biggest disaster. Sex is a powerful thing. And it doesn't have to be flat out intercourse. It can be any version of sex that you want to go down. Everything from heavy petting and making out to oral sex to God knows what else people are doing today. The minute you go down there, you are really looking for trouble. Because outside of marriage, sex makes you stupid. It just makes you stupid. It makes you dumb as a brick. Okay? Now, it's supposed to in marriage. Sex is the one thing that in marriage, it kind of just takes the edge off of life and holds two people together for a lifetime. At least it's supposed to. But when you do it outside of that rush of that and the endorphins and the excitement, you might as well take your brain out, put it in a jar, and set it off somewhere. If you doubt me, look at people around you. Ask some of the people older than you who've been dating and their relationships fall apart. And they'll say stuff like, I don't know why I was with that person so long. He was an idiot. He was mean to me. He was abusive. Girls all the time talk about guys who beat them up, who curse at them, who humiliate them. Guys who talk about women that they were dating and maybe living with for a while or maybe got married to them and they were just and just always being mean and nasty and critical to them. And I always ask them, because sometimes a lot of the emails I'll get are people who've been married for like less than a year and they're in hell. I mean, their lives are miserable. And I think, how do you get from wedding day to hell in like 6 months? I mean, how do you do that? Because some of these guys have been dating for 4, 5, 6 years. And I always ask them, didn't you see that when you were dating? You mean to tell me that all of a sudden he's this way and you never saw that before? And they'll say, no, I never saw it. And money in the bank, man. I ask them all the time, let me ask you a question. Were you having sex before you got married? Every time, without exception, when you have that scenario, they'll say, yeah, I know we probably shouldn't. Look, this isn't even a moral argument that I'm laying out. There's all kinds of moral arguments against this. This is just an intelligence argument. The minute you go down that path, it makes you dumb. You don't see that. People are in bad relationships all the time. Some of you probably even see it with, maybe people closer to your age who are in really bad relationships. Anybody can see it's a bad relationship. They're being abused, they're being taken care of, they're being, or not being taken care of, they're being disrespected, all this other thing, but they won't leave the relationship. They stay with the person. Why? Money says they're having sex with them.
The minute you get really physically involved with someone, it's like something just gets in your head and you can't think clearly. In our Bible studies here at the church that we're doing, we're studying the life of Samson. I mean, Samson, you got to read the story of Samson. It's really bizarre because he meets this chick, Delilah, right? He falls in love with Delilah. He's having sex with Delilah. When you read the story, Delilah is whining and complaining. Tell me how I can kill you. Tell me how I can kill you. Tell me how I can kill you. And he keeps making up stories. Now, really, if you're dating a chick who wants to kill you, you probably should move on, right? But how could he be so dumb? Why wouldn't you? Because it's amazing. When you read the story, it's like, what, are you an idiot? And she's going, you won't tell me how to kill you. You won't tell me how to. And then he finally tells her. You know, cut off his hair and he loses his strength. And finally, because everything he told her to do, she did to him. Then finally he coughs up the real secret. He loses his strength and they gouge his eyeballs out. And it's all gory and stuff. It's kind of cool, actually. But you think, good grief, Samson. How can you be so stupid? I'll tell you why he's so stupid, because he was having sex with a girl. Sex outside of marriage, real physical, and again, it doesn't have to be blown out intercourse, just that makes you stupid. And if you really want, I'm talking to you as Christian young people, you really want to make a good decision for the rest of your life, someone you can build a life with, and for the rest of your life, don't get physical with them. The minute you do that, everything I'm telling you here, flush it down the toilet, because it won't work for you. You can't think clearly. Now, that's not a slam on sex. Sex is fabulous. I'm a big fan. This is one of these things, don't, sex is evil. No, it's not. Sex rocks. Just do it the right way. It's a powerful thing, man. It is seriously powerful. And it's supposed to be. Again, it's supposed to be that powerful thing that holds two people together for a lifetime. But in marriage, you take it outside of marriage where there's not that real commitment yet, it just makes you dumb. All right, final thoughts on dating, especially to you girls. Learn the power of no, okay? The most attractive word to a man, believe it or not, they whine about it like it's not attractive, but the most powerful, attractive word to a guy is no. You tell a guy no, he wants you more than ever, okay? And I say that, I'm not even talking about sex, I'm just talking about don't be there all the time for them. For crying out loud, I can't tell you how many girls I have talked to, and I've really looked forward to doing this DVD because I thought, man, I wish I could talk to these women. But these girls that they're dating for the guy. 3 years, 8 years, 12 years, 37 years. How come he won't date me? How come he won't marry me? How come he won't marry me? Because you're always there for him. For crying out loud. Well, the minute a guy thinks that he can just take you for granted, he will start treating you disrespectfully. Do not tolerate that from any boy. You hear me, girls? You don't tolerate that. If he's not treating you with the kind of respect that you want and the kind of attention you want and showing his intentions towards you to whether or not he wants to be serious, man, the next time he wants to go to a movie, tell him you got to watch your goldfish or something. Tell him no. Watch what happens. It'll jerk the slack out of him. Or if if that makes him freak out, get rid of him now. Good grief. Move on. Don't always be there for him all the time. Well, whatever he calls, I got to be there. 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 Not if he's starting to take you for granted. Value yourself. If you take yourself for granted and you don't treat yourself with value, I promise you, neither will he. You treat yourself like you are worth something, a lot. And he'll treat you the same way. All right? And my final thought on just the whole dating thing, as far as advice, is if you really are looking for, and this is for some obviously older that are really seriously looking for a spouse, the idea of finding someone to marry, you got to go where the fish are. If you're going to go fishing, you don't go to the desert and sit on a rock somewhere and pray. I'm shocked at how, I'm telling you, the number one thing I hear from single Christian people is the following phrase. I'm just praying God will send me a spouse. I'm just praying God will send me a man. I'm just praying God will send me a woman. What are you, Moses? You think God's going to just fly somebody in for you? For crying out loud, quit over-spiritualizing and being so goofball. You want to find somebody, you got to go find where the people are at. Man, if you're living in Alaska of a town of 12 people, and you want to find a spouse and you're praying for God to send you one, you probably need to get out of Alaska, for crying out loud. Use your, quit over-spiritualizing. Listen, I believe you should pray about everything. There's no question about that. Ask God to direct your life, but be intentional. Be smart about it, okay? Anyway, file that away. Now, so those are my basic ideas for dating. Let me talk to you about just marriage in general, and this is really important. You guys have got to, especially you girls. Marriage was never designed to make you happy, okay? If that's your, because if you watch all the chick flicks and all the stuff that you watch, that's, I'm just so empty. I'm such an empty soul. I'm such an empty soul. I finally find my man. Oh, my life is worth something. Okay? Look, if you're an empty soul, for the love of God, stay single. Okay? Two empty souls finding each other does not make a great marriage. It just makes two empty souls who'll get on each other's nerves, and then you'll be divorcing each other 5-6 years down the road. Marriage isn't about making you happy. It's not all about you. And for crying, what be so narcissistic? It's not always about you. The people who make the best marriages are people who are already happy in the first place. Fascinating study that they just did recently, and you can check out a lot of the studies that I'll be referring to in this DVD. You can just go to a website that comes with connected to the DVD. You'll see it on the screen, where you can see all the different studies and stuff that we refer to, and you can look it up for yourself. We won't throw it at you here because it'll be really a boring DVD. But a fascinating study that was done recently. They went and took people's graduation pictures and they rated their smiles. Okay? Now the people who they rated as the best smiles, okay, they took the top 10%. They went through and said, that's a great smile, great smile. And they had their little rating system. I don't know how they did it. Some university people figuring out smiles. So anyway, they took and then they went, because they went and checked them out like 10, 15, 20 years later, after looking at their pictures. An amazing thing, of the people who were in the 10%, not a single one had gotten a divorce. Stop and think about it. That's amazing. I know some parents way in the back. I mean, think about it. Isn't that amazing? Of the top 10% of the smiliest people, not a one of them had gotten divorced. Why? Because they're happy. They're already happy. They're not people who need someone else to make them happy. If you need somebody else to make you happy, you're going to have a real hard time. Nobody's perfect, Be happy. And as Christians, man, let God make you happy. Man, let him be the source of your joy. If you're the kind of person you have to have someone around you or you're miserable, whoa, slow down. You need to get happy in the first place. You're trying to make marriage something that it's not. Best marriages in the world are two people who are already happy, who get together and want to build a life together. They don't need anybody else to make them happy. It's a big trap. The other thing, too, about marriage is it's not about you. Especially as Christians, it's amazing how often, as you read in the Bible, where Jesus told people they need to die to themselves. He'd tell people, forsake all and follow me. Pick up your cross and follow me. Except a seed fall on the ground and die, it remains alone. Die. God wants to kill the selfish part of you. It's part of the Christian experience. We all have, even if you have God in your heart and you're a wonderful person, you're doing all the right things, there's still a selfish part of you. And God wants to help squish that selfish part of you out. All right? And I tell people all the time, there is no more institution more perfectly designed to kill you than marriage. Particularly the selfish part of you, because you can't do it and stay selfish. The people overwhelmingly who end up in divorce are the ones where one or both of them refused to stop being selfish. See, marriage really only ends for one reason only. One or both of them get selfish, and you can't get there. If you go into marriage thinking this is all about me, what I want, when I want, this person makes me feel good. It's all about feelings. I'm so happy with him now. La, 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 la. And then you start living life and they quit making you happy. You're headed for disaster. Marriage is about finding someone to build a life together with. And that means emotionally, financially. It means about having a family. Now here's the big thing that's really messing up people your age today. And it's not your fault. You had nothing to do with it. It's our culture's fault. But it's this idea of adolescence, and not only of adolescence, but of extended adolescence. This is all relatively new. Adolescence, this idea of teenagers, adolescent, you're all supposed to be teenagers, doesn't exist in large parts of the world. It exists in Western culture almost exclusively. And didn't even exist in Western culture until about 90 years ago. And that is this, it's an extension of childhood. They don't want you to quit being children. And they keep treating you like children. In fact, some of you who are so frustrated and you can feel like something's not quite right, and you feel like you just don't fit in between little kids and adults and stuff, it's because you're stuck in this twilight zone that's not really based in reality. And it's this stupid culture that's putting you there. And they don't want you to grow up. Oh, don't grow up. You're teenagers. You can't do anything. You're not responsible. You're too dumb. You can't do anything. They're always still protecting you. And it was one thing, when I was growing up, you were a teenager from like 13 to 18. Now they're trying to make you a teenager from 13 to 32. And we've created this extended adolescence, and they want you to be a child for as long as possible and not take life seriously. And you got to understand something. If you think like that, everything I talk to you about will not make any sense. Because if you're thinking really that I'm going to have to wait till I'm almost 30 years old before I get serious about dating and finding a spouse and getting married, it's not going to work. This whole idea of delayed marriage, and this is some things that a lot of parents don't even agree with me on, and quite frankly, I don't care. But it's all, oh, don't get married too young. Don't get married too young. Wait. You know, you're only 38. Wait. For crying out stinking loud. Everybody's scared to death of marrying too young. It's one of the dumbest things we have going, and it creates an environment where people your age don't take dating seriously because you can't. The world says you can't take it seriously because you have to wait so long. The church tells you, you know, wait till you're almost 30 to get married, but don't have sex. Yeah, how's that working for us? It's ridiculous. And it's creating a disaster. They're telling you, oh, you're too young to commit, too young to commit. I'm telling you, as young men and women, stop listening to this culture. You are not too young to commit. You are young adults. You're not teenagers. You're not adolescent boppy head people. You're human beings. You're young adults. And as I challenge, whether or not the culture around you agrees, I'm telling you, in your own mind, you've got to realize you've got to start taking life seriously. You can grow up. You can start taking life seriously. You can start making decisions that will make sense for you. Too young to commit. What a bunch of nonsense. You know who disproves that every day is the U.S. Army. Right now, in Afghanistan and Iraq, there's guys 18, 19, 21 years of age laying down their lives for one another, giving the greatest amount of commitment a human being can possibly give. Don't tell me people in their teens can't commit. Of course they can commit. The only difference is the Army expects something out of our young people. In fact, they'll kick their butts if they don't. But our culture expects very little. Oh, you're too young, you can't do it. You're too young, la, 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 la. And they put it in a situation where, you know, you're in a no-win deal. Especially for guys, you know, most men, your sexual interest peaks at about age 18. And now they're telling you can't do anything about it for another 12 years? Please. Then we wonder why so many guys are getting involved in porn, why they're trying to have sex with their girlfriends, why they're not taking life serious. I'm talking Christians who act like this. Because we've created this ridiculous nonsense and told them that, oh, the worst thing you can do is, you know, if you're going to be successful in marriage, is you have to be old enough and you have to have enough money and all. And I'm telling you, no, you don't. They're lying to you. Marriages do not end because of how young you get married. They do not end because you don't have enough money, and they do not end because you don't have enough education. They end for one reason and one reason only. One or both of them get selfish, straight up. And the idea that people 19, 20, 21 years of age are incapable of making a commitment for life is ludicrous and absurd. As I travel around the country, I promise you, the people who are the most deliriously happy are the ones who got married at 19, 20, 21, 22 years of age, across the board. This whole idea of waiting till you're almost 30 now is a very new idea. Now it seems like all your life, because it's been all your life. It's only been in the last 20, 30 years this idea's been coming along. And look at the results we're getting. How's it working for us? People are having sex, living with each other, delaying, waiting. Christian people waiting, finally getting married. Have so much baggage by the time they finally get married, their marriages fall apart about 5-6 years in. This culture
even our Christian culture in this area is messed up. And it's time for a revolution where you start saying, no, enough. I'm not a child, I'm an adult. The biggest thing that really factors into whether or not you'll stay married, quite frankly, is the whole sexual side of the deal. There was a survey done a few years ago by Robert Rector and Kirk Johnson of the Heritage Foundation. You can look at the study online at the website. But they did amazing. They looked at this 1995 national survey on family growth and found out that for women 30 years or older who only had one sexual partner, they only had a divorce rate of 20%. And these weren't Christians. This is just everybody, even the pagans. If they just have one, the chances of them having divorce, only 20%. What was shocking is the study showed for all the women who had just one other experience with a guy, it jumped to almost 50%. And those who reported one other guy, just two guys, it jumped to almost 60%. I'm telling you, the single greatest indicator of whether or not you will stay married is not age, not education, not money, it's sexual activity. And it is ludicrous and absurd to put you guys into a situation where you virtually cannot stay sexually pure because we're expecting you to wait so stinking long and say it's about other things, and then we wonder why our marriages are all falling apart. Sex is a powerful thing. We'll be talking more about it in the following session. Our culture is in trouble. We are on the verge of breeding out of existence in Western culture. There's a video also on the website, a YouTube clip that talks about demographics. You watch this thing, man, it'll shock you. I showed it to a lot of our guys this weekend in church. How many of you saw that thing? I mean, was that creepy or what? I mean, it scares you. Western culture, as we know it right now, is in serious trouble. The country that I grew up in, that my parents grew up in, your grandparents, won't be the world you're going to grow up in. And your kid, man, I'm telling you, it's because we're literally breeding ourselves out of existence. Why? Because we're delay. That's why it's hard for you guys to take dating really seriously. Why? Because we set that date of when you can really take it seriously so far in advance, you can't take life seriously. We need to change this. We're in a mess. We need to start changing the way we think. If we start changing the way we think, we'll start changing the results that we get. I want to end with this final scripture. Jesus said this. He says, I tell you the truth. Why did Jesus have to say that? Because people won't believe him. But he said, I'm telling you the truth. Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it will die, it will produce many seeds. Look, if you try to hang on to everything you want, just based on your emotions and based on your feelings and what you want, and I want this and I want that and I want that, and you go into your whole dating process that way and get into a marriage that way, you are headed for a disaster. You will not succeed. The real key is to die to self and to let life birth out of it when you do that. Marriage is about two people getting together and say, you know what, let's build a life together. And it's fab. I'll tell you, if you do it right, marriage can be the closest thing to heaven on earth. You do it wrong, it's the closest thing to hell. And so all you got to do is look at people who've gone through it. It is brutal. It is miserable. What I'm trying to tell you is this cycle of stupidity that you've seen some of your parents going through. Marriage, divorce, marriage, divorce, marriage. At some point, and I'm challenging you, we need to draw a line in the sand and say, enough. We need to stop. We can do this. We can do this right. You guys can do this. You, despite the experience of your parents and your grandparents and your cousins and everybody else that are older than you, you can break this cycle. And it is time, and I'm challenging young people all across America. It's time we do this right. And if you will do this right, you can succeed. But we got to change the way we think. Quit thinking like and I'll tell you what I'm talking about is very radical. In our culture out there, based on the pattern of this world, everything I just told you is completely insanity to them. But look at the results they have. They're a mess. You want to succeed, you got to start doing this stuff right.